And we're back, people. Deluded. I'm back again. I can't imagine you don't know who this is, but Andrew of Arseblog is back in the building. With it being the international break, people, I thought, let me get someone whose opinions I really respect, someone who's very calculated in what he says and sees both sides of a debate and things. And it's always fantastic bouncing ideas off you. How you doing, Andrew, man? You right?
I'm good. I'm glad you couldn't find that person. You've asked me instead, so I'm really happy to be here.
Oh man, and like I said there, with it being the international break, with us being 3 games into the season, I thought, you know what, it'd be nice to bounce some thoughts off a fellow Arsenal fan. The first thing I want to ask you is actually nothing in relation to Arsenal. I want to ask you about a couple of our rivals. Like, what have you made of Liverpool so far this season? Obviously, excluding the game against us.
Like them as a team, or what they've done in the transfer market, or maybe a bit of both?
Everything, bit of both, everything.
I mean, clearly they've spent a lot of money, haven't they? You know, they didn't spend maybe as much as they wanted to. The Mark Gahey deal didn't go through in the end, which is, I think, probably a good thing for us. It offsets what they've done from an attacking perspective, though, because, you know, bringing in Alexander Isak is huge. He's
ridiculous,
probably the best player or the best striker in the Premier League. Florian Wirtz, I know, has had a relatively quiet start to his Liverpool career, but I think he's a quality player. And they're already adding to, a very good attacking team. Ekitike coming in as well, of course, as well. So there's real depth there in the attacking positions. I haven't been hugely impressed with them in the games that I've seen. I've watched their games. I watched the game against Newcastle, and obviously we had the game against us the other day, which, you know, I think was really a very, very even game all round, decided by one moment of top quality from Szoboszlai. So, you know, I think if you're looking at Arsenal, if you want to say maybe Arsenal's performance at Anfield wasn't brilliant, Liverpool's performance wasn't brilliant either. And I think there's probably more mitigation from our side as to why we were maybe a little more conservative in the way we set up and the way we played that game than Liverpool. You know, they didn't have the issues that we had in terms of injuries. So, look, can't argue with points on the board, but I don't think, from what I've seen from Liverpool so far, that they're not a team we can compete with in the league this season. I think we absolutely are. Yeah, look, the Isak thing is always going to add some gloss to their window just because of what a great player he is. But, you know, he could get an injury. He's got some injury issues and has had injury issues over his time at Newcastle. So, listen, they're strong, but then I don't know what we expect. You know, this is the Premier League era. I've seen today Premier League clubs have spent £3 billion on transfers in this window, which is absolutely crazy. And, you know, if you're the champions, if you're Liverpool and you're going to push the boat out, then that's, you know, what we're going to have to compete with. Nobody's going to make it easy for us. That's what I would say.
You said it there. Nobody's going to make it easy for us. Everyone's going to continuously try and improve, us the same, and we'll get onto our transfer market. But you are right. You know, Liverpool, I would say, for me, it was an even game against us. Of course, you know, you go and slap it top bins like Szoboszlai did. You say fair enough. You can't account for that. Maybe we was starting to get a bit overrun and there was something for Mikel Arteta and the boys to look at. But as you said, we had some injuries. We went to Anfield and we coped well. Unfortunately, we just didn't get over the line. But you would rather that happen now in the beginning of the season than at the business end. So all we can do is get more points on the board and take it from there. Manchester City, what have you made of them? Because, you know, they started well against Wolves, you know, destroyed Wolves really. And then it seems like, you know, 2 back-to-back defeats. Doesn't feel like much has changed. It feels like they're struggling defensively and they're expected to be up there with us and Liverpool fighting for the title.
Yeah, I was really interested to see what way City would go this season, you know, because clearly they, you know, after you win the title 4 years in a row, there's going to be a drop-off, right? There's going to be
100%.
A team comes to the end of its cycle. And I think what was most interesting was Guardiola's never been a guy who sort of rebuilt at a club. Like, he had his time at Barcelona, he had his time at Bayern Munich. He came into Man City and created this winning team, but he's never had to sort of repeat that cycle. So clearly they have some problems, defensive problems. They're always going to be strong in attack. They've got one of the best strikers in the world. They've got creative players. They've actually added some good creative players. I think Reinders is good and Cherky is good. He's out though for a little while. Maybe they'll find a way for Phil Foden to get back in the team. So I don't not worry, but I don't really have any doubt that they'll be back from an attacking perspective. The issue, I think, is the defense and the goalkeeper. And they've brought in Donnarumma, which is fascinating because he's obviously a great goalkeeper, but
he's not known for his feet.
He's definitely not
known. Which is like a linchpin to Pep's football.
Well, this is it. And they spent 30 million on a goalkeeper in the summer anyway. A goalkeeper that grew up at Man City, right? James Trafford. He grew up there and then he went to Burnley, and Manchester City must know him very well. But they decided really early in the season that we've spent 30 million, but he's not the guy. So let's bring in Donnarumma. Maybe it's a market opportunity, but it also says that their transfer strategy is a little bit mixed up, So the results, they've lost 2 of their first 3. Plenty of time to recover, no question about that. I think they will be there. I think they will be one of the top 4 this season, but I think once that sort of aura of invincibility is not quite the right word, but City were so strong, people would go to Man City, they go a goal down and go like, that's it.
Yeah, psychologically,
we're cooked. They've scored, exactly. Game over. That's not true anymore. It's not true anymore. And I think teams will take points off Man City in a way that they haven't really done or didn't do in that era where they were, winning title after title after title.
And you're right, because Brighton actually came from behind, and I was watching the game. It was superb. I mean, football's decided at both ends, as we know. I mean, City didn't kill the game when they had the opportunity. Anytime you don't kill an opponent, you give them hope. And it was a fantastic turnaround from Brighton. And where you look at City, if they probably expected either Arsenal or Liverpool to win, that is one where you want to kind of close the gap. I think everybody expects those 3 teams that we've discussed in Arsenal, City, and Liverpool to be fighting for the title. But then that leads me to ask you for Chelsea, because, they do throw a lot of money at this. They are expected to one day get it right. What have you made of Chelsea? Because, again, not that I care because I don't support them. But if I was them, I wouldn't think their transfer market was anything like, wow, that closes the gap and things of that ilk. But where are you at with Chelsea? Like, where's your headspace with them?
I mean, I think just by virtue of the amount that they've spent and the amount of players that they've brought in, they've got to be competitive, don't they? They have to be. The pressure has got to be on Enzo Maresca to deliver. They spent a huge amount of money. In fairness, they brought in a huge amount of money. I don't know how they get some of the transfer fees they do for some of the players. I'm not saying it's dodgy, but it's probably, in that ballpark, So, nevertheless, they buy a lot of players. They stockpile a lot of players and a lot of young talent. He's sort of well established there now. So I think based on their spending, they've got to be title challengers this season, or at least in that mix. Otherwise, I guess it would have to be considered a failure of a season. They're in the Champions League as well. Last season, they had this sort of 2-squad thing, didn't they? Where they were in the Europa Conference League, so they could sort of rest all the good players for the Premier League and then play also good players, but not quite at that level, simply because they have about 50 players. So they could play like a shadow squad in the Europa Conference League, which meant all their best players were fit and healthy and fresh for the Premier League, which I think was an advantage to them. They can't do that this year. Exactly. They can't do it this year in the Champions League. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see, how they cope on 2 fronts.
I've got to ask you about Man United. I know they're not really in the same hemisphere, but I have to ask you about Manchester United, who we did beat on the first game of the season, and maybe karma hit us. Like, it was very different from how we lost at Anfield, but in the sense of performances, both teams probably deserve something. But yeah, where you at with Man United, my friend?
I'm just staggered that they haven't spent some money. I know they brought in a goalkeeper right at the end, didn't they? But I'm amazed that it took that long to bring in a goalkeeper. I'm amazed that they didn't really strengthen in midfield, because I feel like
missed a trick.
It's really an area of the pitch where they're not weak, but they're not set up to play the way that I think Ruben Amorim wants his teams to play. I don't think they have the technical quality. They don't have the physical quality in midfield. They decided to go all in up front, and they brought in Sesko and Cunha and Mbuemo. You
Yep.
know, the latter two, both very good players who've done well in the Premier League. Sesko, you know, a work in progress, I guess, a bit of a project player, but certainly has got lots of talent and lots of potential. But I just wonder if some of that outlay could have gone into midfield to make them a little more solid and coherent as a team, because they still feel a bit all over the place. You know, I watched the game against Burnley at the weekend. They were
Got away with one.
a little bit. You know, I think they were well on top. You know, when you look at the stats and you look at the chances and you look at the amount of shots they had, they probably on balance deserved to win the game. But of course, it came very late. A bit of stupidity from the Burnley defender. I don't know what he's doing there. No, me neither. It's just like, just run across him. I don't know. Players do mad things in the heat of the moment. That's the reality of it. So they got their win, but I think they've been unconvincing. I think they will be better than last season, but I still think there's a fragility there, and I think there's something fundamentally wrong with the club itself. I think a lot of what we're seeing on the pitch at Manchester United is connected to the culture at the football club and the way it's owned and the people who are running the club and the way they treat people. So I think they will be better, but I still think they'll be inconsistent.
And I think that's bang on the money. I kind of look at Man United very differently, but the parallels when we were kind of in that situation where we did play free at the back, where we did have one game a week, it's almost like they need, I think Ralph Rangnick said it, like open heart surgery. They really need to go back to basics. So then that leads me to ask you about Spurs, because I must admit, under Thomas Frank, I'm not saying I'm scared of them or they're going to finish above us, but they look like they're more tactically coached across all aspects of the team. It's like Postecoglou was just, I'm going to attack. That's it, really and truly. So where are you at with Spurs? Because I think they pressed well. I think they did that well against City. I think they did it well, if I can remember correctly, against us in pre-season. But where are you at with Spurs?
Well, I mean, they got absolutely battered by Bournemouth at the weekend at home.
Yeah.
Like statistically battered. Bournemouth should have won that game 4 or 5-0. You know, I think Frank is obviously a more tactically astute manager than Postecoglou. No two ways about it. He really is. But I, as I've always said, there is something about that club where good managers and big managers and managers who've achieved success everywhere just get sucked into what that club is and what happens.
The life out of them.
You know, like look at Antonio Conte.
Exactly.
Look at what he did everywhere he went, and look at what he won everywhere he went. And he walked out of Tottenham like he had lost his mind. He had absolutely lost his mind with the way that club is run. Yeah. Mourinho won everywhere he went until he went to Tottenham, and has never been the same man since, has he? You know, so. Listen, I think you can make a good case about Frank, and I think he's a very smart guy, a very good manager, did a brilliant job at Brentford. And there's always that worry that somebody someday is going to get it right at Spurs. But I just don't look at their squad and think it's got enough to challenge consistently. Again, considering that because of how terrible Manchester United are, Spurs are in the Champions League. Can they deal with that schedule? Can they deal with that schedule? Like weekend, midweek? Do they have the depth? Do they have the quality? Not for me. So I think they might find it tough going in either the Champions League or the Premier League, but obviously I hope both.
I hope both as well. And it's an interesting one because I actually completely forgot. And you are right. They, via beating Man United, they are in the Champions League. As talented as Thomas Frank is, obviously he's never managed in the Champions League. So it's new terrain for him. And like you said, like they don't have the biggest of squads. To be fair to them, they have tried to go about it with one or so signings. But as an Arsenal fan would tell you, it's all fun and games at the start of the season. When the fixture pile-up happens and there's changing dynamics, and God forbid, but it is an occupational hazard of injuries, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So I would say, I actually would still say my favourites for the Champions League are PSG, but I would rate probably Arsenal and Liverpool's chances the most of winning it. To be brutally honest, though, I guess you'd have to say Chelsea, because they do find a way to make it happen. So then that leads me to talk about the Premier League. What have you thought about, like, what have you made of Arsenal better yet in the 3 games so far? With what we've played Man United, we played Liverpool, we've played Leeds, 7 points from 9. Where are you at with everything?
6 points from 9, because we didn't get that point that I think we probably deserved at Anfield.
Harsh, man.
Listen, the opening day, go away to Old Trafford. It's a really difficult place to go. Get the win. First game of the season. I'm not that interested in the performance at all. I'm interested in taking 3 points. So we did that, and I'm happy with that. First home game, we win 5-0. Can't really argue with that.
Can't ask for nothing more.
You know, Liverpool on Sunday, a game I think that has created a lot of debate and a lot of discussion, which I understand. I think I liked what Arne Slot said after the game, actually, where he said, if you played this game 10 times again in this way, 8 times it's going to be a draw. 1 time Arsenal win it, 1 time Liverpool win it. And this was the 1 time that Liverpool won it. It was a brilliant free kick. And we didn't really have an answer to that. So I get some concerns about some of the team selection decisions or some of the game management decisions. But I also think you have to recognize that Anfield is not a place we've won at since 2012. You know,
since Arteta was actually on the playing front.
So I really find it strange that so much of the post-game discussion is like, Arsenal should have just gone for it. Arsenal should just go to Anfield and win. It's the champions.
And Liverpool didn't exactly go for it to a degree.
Exactly. Liverpool did not go for it. These two teams respect each other a great deal. They cancelled each other out, and there was one moment of brilliance in that game that Liverpool were the beneficiaries of, right? I think, you know, you can't look at a game like this without all of the context, and that context of Liverpool being as good as they are, which they are. Our record at Anfield, which is not bad of late, but like I said, we haven't won there for over 10 years. We're also without Bukayo Saka, without Kai Havertz, without Ben White, without Martin Odegaard, without Leandro Trossard, basically, because we needed a goal and we didn't bring Trossard off the bench because he was basically injured. He was sort of there to make up the numbers, and you can make an assessment yourself as to whether or not that's the right thing to do, to have a player on the bench if he's not even capable of coming on. But I think if Trossard was 100% fit and we need a goal in the last 10, 15 minutes at Anfield, he's coming on. So he's not. So we have all these players who are not fit. And I think it's fair to ask, would we have seen a different kind of Arsenal performance or a different approach to the game if we had those players fit? I think
Saliba went down as well.
Oh, yeah, God, I forgot about that. Like William Saliba in the first minutes of the game, he goes on.
Dropped.
Same. You know, and big up to Christian Mosquera, who came in and did
very
brilliantly, by the way. But I think you can't look at that game and not think Arsenal they had more issues to deal with than Liverpool. Are you going to tell me Liverpool are going to play the same against Arsenal if they don't have Virgil van Dijk and they don't have McAllister and they don't have Mo Salah and they don't have Ekitike, for example? You know, what way are Liverpool going to play that game?
They're going to have to.
Are they going to go hell for leather at Arsenal? No, they're not.
Doesn't make sense.
You know, so I think, listen, we're like one free kick away from everybody coming away from Anfield going, okay, first 3 games of the season out of the way. We've got a decent point at Anfield. You'll take that all day long at this stage of the season. But we were beaten by a world-class goal, and you have to hold your hands up to that. But I don't and cannot get my head around the idea that our approach to this game was wrong, because if you go to Anfield and just say, right, we're going to have a go, Liverpool will go, thank you very much. We will eat up that space that you leave as you're coming forward.
Not end well.
And that's the reality. Like it or not, that is the reality of how that is going to play out. And let's remember as well that 70 minutes into this game, he brought on Odegaard and Eze for Mikel Merino and Gabriel Martinelli. Merino, a more functional player. Martinelli was having a terrible game. He sort of went for it a bit in those final 20 minutes. He said, right, it's 0-0, 20 minutes to go. I'm bringing on my captain and most creative player, and I'm bringing on our new summer signing on the left-hand side. That was not conservative. He could have made conservative changes. They weren't conservative. So I get it. Everyone's frustrated at losing. Everyone's frustrated at The fact that we lost to Liverpool in particular because of the title rivalry.
And
But I
now
think,
another year with no win at Anfield. So it's just
yeah,
it's a melting pot, really.
I really think you have to look at the context of this game. And I think if there is a complaint to be made, or if there is a real concern to be expressed about what we saw on Sunday, it's why do we have so many injuries at this point in the season? Why are we without these players? What is going on with our injuries at this moment in time that are forcing our hand? And I think the club have done really well this summer. I really like the summer business. We've pushed the boat out in terms of incomings. We're giving ourselves depth.
A
But
lot
let's
of
not
players.
ignore the fact that we are missing key important players really early in the season that would have made a difference at Anfield on Sunday.
Yeah, I think you're speaking facts. I think everybody's got a lot to say about how Arsenal play against the top six. And it's not that it's anything to brag about because it's not a trophy, but we haven't lost against the traditional top six in 2 years. And as Andrew said, for those of you listening, we had injuries and obviously Saliba's gone down. I'm not saying it was the most expansive football. I'm not necessarily saying I'm necessarily happy, but it does feel, maybe it's the media, but Arsenal are the only team expected to just go gun-ho, throw the kitchen sink at it from minute 0 to 90. And I agree with certain things. I do think we could have been a bit braver. I do think in general at times with Mikel Arteta, maybe he could take the handbrake off or do something a bit unpredictable. I do wonder if in hindsight, regardless of if Eze has only been here 2 minutes, if he felt like starting him. I don't necessarily think it's wrong, but I do think there's something in setting up not to win versus setting up to not lose versus to win, even though I don't think Arteta or Arsenal go out there and say, yeah, we don't want to win at Anfield. Yeah, we're just playing for set pieces. I do think generally, not isolated to necessarily Liverpool, but off the backdrop of last season, clearly attacking football, moving the ball quicker, finding different kind of solutions. That is something that we've struggled with, and that's something we have to add. But if you watch Arsenal and Liverpool, both teams set up to respect each other. If I'm completely honest, it was both teams, that it looked like 3 games into the season, nobody really looked fit. And in the second half, if I'm honest with you, several players looked like they were dying. I do think we could have created more. Obviously, the free kick, you hold your hands up. Nobody had that on their bingo card. But I do think the second half kind of is what led to our demise, because I actually think we started the first half well and ended it well. I think the game was kind of getting away from us. I'm a big fan of Zubimendi, but I did think he was dying out there and we were kind of getting overran and he gave away the free kick, and 9 times out of 10 that doesn't happen, but it kind of is what it is. You mentioned Martinelli, and I don't want to create a pylon, but it's very difficult not to speak about Martinelli. We know he's at that point now as a winger where he's in the team because of what he does going backwards. But like, what has gone on? Like, what has gone wrong for Martinelli? Is it the coaching? Is it Mikel Arteta? Is it Martinelli? Was he ever, I don't want to be disrespectful to him, but that season he had where he stood out, Andrew, was he ever that good? Or was it a thing where the system is just getting a lot out of him? Like, where are we at with Martinelli now? Because it's sad.
Well, yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I think what we're looking at is a player who's very, very low on confidence. Doesn't look like he's got a lot of self-belief. When he gets the ball, he doesn't look like he can make things happen, or he doesn't believe that he can make anything happen with the ball. His decision-making is wrong. People will have, I'm sure, seen a lot of the breakdowns of the Liverpool game and that moment early in the first half where he had a couple of opportunities to play the ball to Gyökeres. Instead, he took it on into the box. He dribbled, head down, lost the ball. And that's symptomatic and emblematic of where he is at this moment in time. Is it the system? I don't know. Maybe he does suffer a little bit with the lack of connection with the center forward because, well, for most of last season, or well, for the second half of last season, he didn't really have a center forward to play with.
Yeah.
Havertz was injured and Marino was there. He's a midfielder, did well enough. Trossard did, that the season where he did really well, it was Zinchenko, Xhaka, Martinelli on that left-hand side consistently. And maybe those 3 got the best out of each other in a way. Maybe there was something to that. It's worrying. I think as well, it's fair to say that I think he is capable of better. I think we have seen a lot better from Gabriel Martinelli. And what we're seeing as a player right now is completely and utterly out of form, in a real funk. That does raise questions about where his future lies or where his place in the pecking order is at this moment in time under Mikel Arteta. I don't think his form is in a place where you say he should be starting games right now. But I do think we can remember when we've got more from Gabriel Martinelli, when there is when we've had exciting times at Gabriel Martinelli. And I think even still, we're sort of short a player or two, aren't we, who's got pace, who can get in behind. The reality at this moment in time is, if somebody sends Gabriel Martinelli in behind, are you confident that he's going to do the right thing? Are you confident he's going to apply the finish? No, but I think he's better than we're seeing at this moment in time. But what we're seeing at this moment in time requires him to sort of sit things out a little bit, and work his way back into first team contention, because, the form is just not good enough.
So then it leads me to ask you about Eze, because obviously when we signed Eze, everyone was happy, excited. He's coming back home. We never had it on our bingo cards that would happen, even the way that it all got hijacked. We all know he can play as an 8, as a 10 out wide. And I'm sure yourself and everybody listening, they've had their conversations. Where are you at with the whole, does he play in midfield? Does he play left wing? Do you just put him out there regardless? Because from what I saw against Liverpool, not that it was long enough in a case study, like, you're better than Martinelli out there, but where are you at with that?
I really don't mind. I think this is an exceptional player who's got the ability to play from the left. I think what's interesting is the new signing, Piero Nkapie, coming in, who's a bit more of an overlapping left back when he plays, which is interesting to consider. If you're thinking about Eze on the left-hand side, does he come inside and you've got Nkapie overlapping outside him, whereas Calafiori and Lewis Skelly tend to play that more inverted left-back midfield role, right? Calafiori plays wherever the hell he wants, and was actually brilliant. Brilliant again. I thought he was brilliant against Liverpool. I thought he had Mo Salah
on the trot now.
Yeah, I thought he was really, really good. So I do think that's something interesting to consider about where Eze is going to play. Like, if he plays on that left, he's not going to be the guy who's going to go on the outside. He's not going to be the guy who's burning fullbacks to get crosses in with his left foot. That's not his game. You don't want to ask him to do that. But do you want him operating in what's a good comparison here? Let's say somebody like Robert Pires for Arsenal a few years ago, who was a right-footed player playing on the left, typically or similarly elegant, but who was best when you got him into those more central areas, got him in around the box, the edge of the box. He could shoot, he could score. He was creative. I think there's something to that. So I'm curious to see what kind of combinations Mikel Arteta puts out. I also think Eze could start in the middle. Like, I think there was probably a good case to be made going into the Liverpool game, and it was probably something they considered. Could you play Eze instead of Odegaard in that position? Or could you shift Declan Rice over to the right and play Eze as the sort of left 8? I know the Rice Zubimendi connection has kind of changed things a little bit, because we saw Declan Rice dropping very deep against Liverpool, dropping between the centre half quite a lot. And that's not where you would have wanted Eze to play, for example. But I think over the course of this season, he's going to play some on the left. He's going to play more centrally. I'm really not worried. I just think his quality is such that he will be part of this team. I expected, to happen pretty quickly after the international break, to be honest, where I think Martinelli's form is such that if you bring in Eze on the left for a little while and then see where it goes, nobody will be complaining, because I think he's got the quality to deliver from there. And then he's got the versatility to play minutes elsewhere as and when we need him as well.
And that's the thing. I think in real time, if you were to like put Eze out wide or put a bunch of these players in certain positions, a lot of fans would have a lot of things to say. But obviously, when the game is actually played in real time and you're watching it, just because on paper it says he's a left winger, it doesn't mean he actually is. And you made a great point with Hincapie. If Hincapie is overlapping, Eze's going inside, that's actually something I want to see from Mikel Arteta. I understand that we have to be very structured and everyone's got a certain position to occupy. But I do think people could swap positions, and, if Rice makes a run in behind, or like Eze goes inside, Rice might be a centre mid, so he holds the whip. I just think we're at that stage where we could be a bit more unpredictable and go a bit more against the grain. And I think we've earned that right of being a household name. We are one of the best teams in the Prem and in Europe. But I do think we need to be a bit more random. This leads me to ask you then about Wanieri, because I know, fair enough, Eze didn't start. We've spoken about Odegaard, he wasn't fit. Could it have on one hand, I think it's too big of a game necessarily to start Wanieri, but then I believe it's not. Could Wanieri have been utilised, or even Miles Lewis-Skelly off the bench in midfield?
I have to say, I was quite shocked that Wanieri didn't come on rather than Max Dowman. Like, I love the Max Dowman story. It's great. It's romantic. It just felt to me like Mikel Arteta bought into that in a sort of illogical way. Like, he's a very, from what we know of him, right? He's a very
methodical man.
Methodical, exactly. He thinks about everything that he does. He thinks about what he says, how he does it. And I think in this situation, we needed a goal at Anfield. And what we had on the bench was a player last season who almost got into double figures in goals. He got 9 goals last season, primarily playing from that right-hand side, right? So if he's going to take Madueke off, who was...
Big him up as well. He had a good game.
Thought he had a good game. If you're really looking for a goal, if you're looking for somebody who can strike the ball, if you're looking for somebody who can make a pass, if you're looking for somebody who can bang one in the top corner from 25 yards, that player is Ethan Wanieri. It's not Max Dowman. So I found it really, really odd that Dowman got on ahead of Wanieri. Trossard, maybe I understand because we talked about him. I think he was injured.
Yeah, because he might not be fit. Yeah.
But why not play Wanieri in that position? And why not give yourself a better chance of scoring a goal than Dowman, whose talent and potential is outrageous. We all know that, but he's 15 years of age. It felt like Mikel Arteta made a decision with his heart rather than his head, and I think he's better listening to his head.
And sound like a fairy tale kind of thing,
you know. But again, I think there's a lot of football to play. There's going to be a lot of minutes to play. I think Wanieri gives us something, you know. He came on for Odegaard against Leeds. I thought he was really good, very tidy, very efficient, not spectacular. But we also have to remember that was the first time in his senior career that he's really played in that position, because most of his football has come on the right-hand side. So that's probably why he went for Marino ahead of Wanieri. I would have preferred to see Wanieri from the start against Liverpool. Personally, that's my personal preference. But we all know, as we said, that Mikel Arteta mostly makes decisions with his head. And he thought, well, Marino's got more experience. Newcastle gave Liverpool problems with a big, strong, experienced midfield.
That's a good point.
You know, so then it wasn't surprising to me that Marino started. But I did find the idea that Wanieri didn't come on very, very odd. I think it was a bad decision by Arteta. But I think over the course of this season, as you said, we're going to have a lot of football. We've got Premier League, we've got Champions League, we've got cups that we want to go for this season, right?
And everyone wants to win the league.
Say again?
With a squad to do it now.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it. Yeah, you know, there is real scope for rotation. So there's going to be lots of game time for Wanieri, who I think I'm really excited by, to be honest. I think seeing him in that midfield position and seeing him do things maybe a little bit differently from Odegaard could be part of what makes this team unpredictable. And listen, it's 3 games in. I think one of the things we have to recognize is that when you have a summer where you bring in 8 players, and
really unprecedented for us.
Really unprecedented. I can't remember it before. You can't remember it before. Nobody watching this can remember that before. I think we all like it, right? We all appreciate
you love it.
All appreciate that. But I think we have to recognize that when you bring in 8 players, it's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take a bit of time for everything to gel and for everyone to sort of fit together and for everyone to understand where they are, and for even for the manager to recognize what he's got at his disposal. But I do like the fact that some of the players that we've brought in this summer feel a bit at odds with the way Mikel Arteta has operated, right? That sort of cautious, handbrakey approach. Madueke is not a handbrake player. Gyökeres is not a handbrake player. We've got to learn to feed Gyökeres. Eze is not a handbrake player. Even in Capia at left back, he is not a handbrake player. So I think we have to just bide our time a little bit, because I think part of the strategy this summer has been to make us a bit more unpredictable, to make us a bit more random, and to bring elements to our game which have been missing that I think we all want to see. And that's just a bit more forward drive rather than I don't want to say safety first, but players who want to go out there and make things happen rather than players who are a little too wedded to the structure.
Exactly. It's like they do say attack is the best form of defense. I don't want us to be a bit gun-ho, but I wouldn't even say we've lost our way. But as much as I like the fact that Arteta is methodical, he thinks about the opposition and what they're going to do, and he kind of stifles. And again, not that you can take away Szoboszlai's free kick, but you take away that kind of randomness of football. Statistically, and what we saw with our eyes is even, but that's actually what I think we're on the wrong side of 9 times out of 10. Is that a goal like Szoboszlai scored? Obviously, it happened against our club, so I'm not happy. But that's why we watch football. Those moments that you can't predict. Couldn't tell you what the XG was from there, but it was probably something crazy. I kind of need that healthy randomness, and it feels like Arteta. And it's not wrong. We're very systemic and system-based first. So then it leads me to ask you a question like, do you think Arteta kind of has to be at war with himself? Because I do think if Kai Havertz was fit, considering everything, I don't think Marino starts. I think he goes with Kai. But you touched on Wanieri. Could he have went like against the grain and went with a Wanieri? Like, it's almost like he's gone from having no options, whether that's last season with injuries or even, let's face it, when we did have a strongest 11 last season, the 11 be out there. There's probably 2-3 off the bench that we knew would play or have a realistic chance of playing. Now you've got serious options in defense, let alone in attack. So like, do you think Arteta's kind of at war with, gonna have to be at war with himself or his own system to kind of get us to a next level and make us unpredictable, especially in the final third? Because we got Gyökeres up there and we're not creating anything really. It's been feeding off scraps.
Of course he does. Of course he does. I think the summer business acknowledges that.
Yeah,
these are players that have to shake you out of, I don't want to say a comfort zone, but you've got to adapt to these players. These players bring different qualities to this team, and you either use them or you don't. Like, did we buy them for no reason, or did we buy them as part of a strategy to shake this team up and to do things a bit differently? I mean, we're only 3 games in. I think it's really difficult, you know, not just with Arsenal, but with every other team to draw any real conclusions.
Yeah, but you know football fans, Andrew.
I know football fans, of course. Yeah, I do. And I get it. And listen, have we seen yet from this Arsenal team all the things we'd like to see this season? No, of course not. But I think you got to give it a bit of time. You've got to let these players settle in. You've got to let the manager figure out a way
work his magic,
use them. And yes, Arteta does have to be different. I mean, you know, the sort of question about whether he's an attacking coach or not is a really interesting one. I think it's
a weird one. He's in the middle.
He is absolutely convinced that the best way to attack is to have a solid defensive platform. No two ways about it, right?
Yeah.
Arsene Wenger, do you remember going into like a league season with Kolo Touré being moved to center half, and everyone was going, Kolo Touré at center half? Like, Wenger's philosophy was all about, like, let's get forward and we'll see if our defense can cope. And it did for the invincible season, because we had Ashley Cole and we had Sol Campbell and we had Kolo Touré, who was brilliant at center half, and we had Lauren at right back. Those players could cope. But then, even when we had really good attacking players like Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez, and the defenders couldn't cope. They could not cope. And therefore you just sort of, you stagnate or you go backwards, right? So Arteta's philosophy has been to build an incredible defense. And it is an incredible and it's an incredible defensive unit. Very good goalkeeper, the best central defensive partnership in the world. We've added to that again this season. But I think what he has to do now is trust those defenders a bit more, knowing that they have that kind of quality to allow his team to go forward. Up the field. Exactly. Go forward and express yourself. And the season where we nearly won the league, we scored more goals than the Invincibles. That's not a defensive coach.
Exactly.
But it is a coach whose focus is more defensive than attacking. And I think we have to tip the balance the other way. We have to tip the balance the other way. The defense is good enough. It's solid enough. But we play too many games on the margins where one goal can be the difference. Whereas I think if we we can get forward a bit more, and if he is willing to sort of let the defenders defend a bit more, you know what I mean? Leave them exposed a little bit more, because we're taking risks higher up the pitch. I think it could be. I think it could be beneficial. It could be the thing that unlocks the team from an attacking perspective, based on what we saw last season. But last season, we didn't have Saka for a long time. We didn't have Havertz for a long time. We didn't have Jesus after January. Like, we had Jesus for about 3 weeks last season, because he didn't score, and then all of a sudden he was like found his shooting boots, and then he got a big injury, which is
the United
really
game
sad. You know, Trossard and Martinelli were fine, but they weren't brilliant. You know, we had problems in our attack last season, which we've addressed now, because we brought in a winger in Madueke, we've brought in Eze, we brought in a striker. You know,
serious striker that everybody wanted as well.
You've got to let these guys try and do it in the final third. So that's where I think we need to see the change from Arteta. Trust in that defense. Trust in a player like Zubimendi, who he really wants, who's a very, very, very good,
very intelligent,
deep-lying, intelligent midfield, deep-lying midfield player who is defensively stronger than people think, not because he's a big tackler and he's going to steam into things, but because he reads the game really well.
And you've got Rice as well.
And Declan Rice, who can cover more ground than
like a horse.
Yeah, exactly. So accept that you have those strengths, and they are big strengths, and make yourself stronger higher up the pitch. That's what I want to see.
And that's why I asked you, especially when I said, is Arteta at war with himself? Because he's got players individually and tactically that, you know, are good defensively. He leaves nothing to chance. But then obviously, where in theory you might leave some players further up, or as you said, leave some defenders exposed, you might lose a bit defensively, but you might gain a lot in an attacking sense, because we've got attackers in certain places. And that's kind of, if I'm honest with you, Andrew, what I wanted to see against Liverpool. Like, I know I'm a hypocrite. If it was 0-0 and we gambled and we lose 1-0, we've all got something to say. I actually think that was said last season at the Emirates when people said we was cautious. But I would have said, you know what? If you did gamble, maybe take a defender off or change things. It might not have worked today, but it might work in another incident. That's why I think you're bang on the money. And then I want to ask you then, and I'm sure you've been asked this, like, do you think Mikel Arteta is scarred from that season we scored more goals than the Invincibles? Because that's why I disagree when people say he's not an attacking coach. He has the capacity to do it, but for some reason, you're not kind of doubling down on that. Like, do you think he's scarred from how he was defensively and he's kind of gone the other way?
But I mean, defensively, we were very good that season as well.
True.
You know, our issue in that season where we scored more goals than the Invincibles was that we couldn't score against Aston Villa, couldn't score against Fulham, couldn't score against West Ham. Remember that game against West Ham where I think they won 2-0 in the end, but basically it was fucking smash and grab at the Emirates around Christmas time. Our issue was not defensive then. And I think what he did last season, that is kind of, look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. My opinion is that last season, when we had that injury to Odegaard, when we got the injury to Saka, when we got the injury to Havertz, when we got the injury to Jesus, was that he felt the best way for his team to cope was to lean into our defensive strength.
You got no choice with them amount of injuries, to be honest with you.
That's what I think. I don't think he was scarred by the season that we didn't win the league. I really don't, because for me, that is basically everything Arteta wants from a team. Hugely efficient for most of the season. We won 16 out of our last 18 games. We drew one with Man City, and we couldn't get a goal against Aston Villa, or a couple of goals against Aston Villa. And that's the thing. That season, I think, is his blueprint. That is what I think he wants to replicate. Defensive strength and attacking potency. That is what he wants. And that's what I think this summer has been about. That's what I think it's about. You know, the way we've spent, the way we've got such depth in every position now, that's what I think they want to replicate. Now it's about eliciting those performances, you know, and people won't be convinced until we see this team score goals and create more chances on a regular basis. But like I said to you a few minutes ago, I think 3 games in is too early to make any real judgments as to whether this team or this group of players is capable of doing that. I think when you look at the the squad on paper? Yes, it is. Are we seeing it yet on the pitch?
No.
No. But then we've been away, two of the most difficult away games you can have in the Premier League. Away at Old Trafford, even if United have been crap, and away at Anfield.
Anyways, it's not a good place to go to.
The champions. That you have to take into account when you're looking at the performances, for me. You know,
And if
and
we
it's
go
when
at the Etihad, everybody's cool with it again.
yeah.
Really.
The other thing about the Liverpool game is if Arteta went for it and he went, right, you know, throw caution to the wind and we get turned over. Exactly. Everyone's going to say, when are you going to learn? Why don't you learn? Et cetera, et cetera. You know, so it's one of those difficult ones. You know, it's results based and results hurt people. And I understand that completely. I get it. It's frustrating to lose and annoying to lose. But I think, you know, if we're at Christmas time and we're not scoring goals and we're not creating chances, then I'm getting really worried. But there's a long way to go between now and then. And I think, you know, what we have in this squad is really exciting to see how it's all going to gel together.
And I think the most annoying thing beyond the obvious of a defeat is when you lose just before an international break, even though this is one of the shorter ones, it does leave a sour taste in your mouth. You kind of have to just sit with it. I think every Arsenal fan, even the most balanced of Arsenal fans, knows that every week it's going to be something different with our football club. Had we have beat Liverpool, because some of our fans are volatile, we're going to win the league, we're going to do this. Now it's all doom and gloom. The reality is we've got 7 points from 9. It could be a lot better, but it could be a lot worse. What are we going to do with that? Sorry, yeah, apologies. Even better. Yeah.
I like this. I like your style here, you know. Could you add that point on to that season we didn't win the league? Add a couple of points on there and we're champions, man.
I've got PTSD, I guess.
In charge of the Premier League and we're lifting trophies.
But then even that, like, again, you mentioned it. One thing that I'm more confident about this season is the depth, because obviously I look at depth two ways. I would rather it be, oh my God, who is Arteta going to play? You know, who's going to be on the bench? All of those kind of things. The other side is the negative side, innit? People get injured, nobody's fit. How can we absorb that kind of pressure? And I think the best thing for Madueke was actually signing Eze, because now people are looking at Madueke in a different kind of light. You know, we all know with the whole Chelsea stench and the petitions and all that kind of stuff, he's done well. I'm a big fan of Mascara. I'm a big fan of what Hincapie could be. Even Kepa's quite decent. So I think we've got the tools now to really give a go of things, and all we can do is just keep going. Where are you at on the trophy front? Like, I'm not like, I know you'll probably ask this all the time, but is it imperative these boys or Mikel Arteta win some element of silverware this year? Because there are a lot of fans who kind of feel like that. It feels like there's a bit of a civil war brewing within the Arsenal fan base.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really important for the manager. I think it's really important for this group of players as well. You know, it really is important. Like if you're Bukayo Saka and Odegaard and Saliba and Gabriel, like you're playing in a really good team. You know, people forget Arsenal are a really good team. We finished second 3 years in a row. You don't do that if you're not.
Flowers, though.
You don't. Yeah, of course. And that's part of the frustration, right? That you come so close and you don't win something. But I do think it's really, really important for our best players to win trophies, because I think they're good enough to win trophies and they will feel like they're, you know, being really close. Like, I do think it's hugely important. Of course it is. Of course it is. That, you know, at some point these guys will think, right, well, where am I going to go now? Because I need to win things. I want medals. I want trophies. You know, I've done my best here. And season after season, if I'm doing my best and I'm not winning trophies, I've got to think about something else, right? I think that's perfectly reasonable. I also think what Arsenal have done this summer, spending 290 million euros
crazy
on 8 players, tells you that they recognize that as well. They recognize it's time. It's time to win things. It's time to win trophies. It's time to win the Premier League again after 20 odd years. It's time to go the distance in the Champions League for this club. Came close-ish last season.
Sad.
But look at what we had on the bench when we played PSG. You know, I'm sorry, with all due respect to people like Nathan Butler-Oyedeji and Raheem Sterling, with kids and a guy who just wasn't up for it anymore, you know. And what they've said this summer is that can't happen again. If we get to the semifinals of the Champions League and we've got to go play PSG or Barcelona or Bayern Munich,
we need the right tools.
You need depth. And the club this is what it is. The club have said, we want trophies now.
Because we're that close. We're closer to getting over the line than the other way.
But that is the message that they're sending with this transfer business. So I don't think anybody who says it's important that Arsenal win trophies this season is being entitled or greedy or unreasonable or anything like that. You know, does it make it a guarantee? No, of course not. Of course, it's really difficult to win the league. It's really difficult to win the Champions League, you know, but I sort of feel a bit like if this team can sort of get this burden of not winning trophies off their back, I think it will liberate them. I think we
get one and then you get more, hopefully, anyways.
Sort of breed a little more success. So I really, really hope that there you go. Someone just said that in the comments. So there you go. I think that's what it is. We need to sort of, whether it's a psychological thing or something else, get it out of the way, win something, and then start winning and winning and winning. Because what they've done is they've built a squad to compete for the next 2-3 years, right? And if we don't win anything in those 2 or 3 years,
it's a shame.
It's going to be a shame for these players. It's going to be a shame for us as fans. And I think ultimately it'll be a shame for Mikel Arteta, because I think generally speaking, he has done a really, really good job at Arsenal. He's taken this club from a very difficult position into one where we're sitting here going, people are going mad because we haven't won the Premier League. And a few years ago, we were in the doldrums, right? So I think whatever you think of Arteta, or you have to recognize the job he's done to get us to this point. And I would love for him to win trophies. But if he doesn't, then it's going to be somebody else who gets that job. It's going to be somebody else's job. That's how football works. You know?
And there's nothing wrong with that, Andrew. As you said there, like, God forbid, but if Arteta left today, from when he walked into now, we're in a much better place. We're laughed at about keeping clean sheets, about Arsenal. Our people get onto Arsenal for being good defensively. That is unheard of since we've moved to the Emirates. And the thing is, if Arteta is the guy to get us over the line, great. If he's the guy that steadied the ship, he could also leave with his head held high. Unfortunately for Arteta, we know you're a good coach. You need to show you're a winning coach now. I know you've won the FA Cup, but everything's been geared up to do that. And people rate you. And there is that element of, have we hit a glass ceiling, which I hope isn't the case. I hope we can shatter through that this year. But that's something we're going to need to do. And I'd say the positive is, it's not to say we're the biggest and baddest, but it feels like a lot of problems we can eradicate ourselves, regardless of how good other teams are. So we're just going to have to do it, really. And I'd say my biggest fear is mental fatigue. I keep saying this on my platform. I say mental fatigue for Mikel Arteta, because credit to him, as Wenger used to say, I think stamina and motivation, because it can't be nice being so close but so far every year, but you keep going. I'm more concerned about the players for that. And then if that does become the case, I'm not trying to, be the guy that says all the doom stuff, but are players going to down tools? Do you get into that element where maybe players need different voices and things of that ilk? Naturally, some fans would say, oh, you get rid of Arteta, we do start again. We just need silverware. I think the players deserve it. I think the fans deserve it. And I think the coaching staff deserve it. So we're going to have to see where it takes us. Where are you at in total with Berta this window, though? Because, I mean, the man joined in March. Not really too much in terms of outgoings or money for outgoings, but incomings he did well. How far removed is he from Edu? Like, I don't want to even get onto Edu, but this seems like something we needed way before Edu even came to the club. We needed this before him.
Well, look, there's no arguing with the incoming business. Nobody can argue with that. The money we've spent, the players we've brought in, the way we've, like I said, added real depth and quality in pretty much every position. Can't argue with that whatsoever. Where I think I have an issue is the incoming business, because you can't, we've spent so much this summer. This is unprecedented. We're not going to do this next summer or the summer after or the summer after. We're not going to do anything in January. And part of the reason we're not going to do anything in January is because we didn't sell well. We only brought in 10 million euros. Now, I know the Kivior deal will bring in some money next summer, and that's fine. And I know that some of the players are not the most high profile or not the most wanted, but I do think we have not extracting any value from Karl Hayne, who's an international goalkeeper, Alexander Zinchenko, multiple Premier League winner, by the way. His stock has fallen at Arsenal, but you're still
Eddie
talking
probably done
about
us
a
a
good
favour.
player. Yeah, Edu did us a little favor there on deadline day. Fabio Vieira, Albert Sambi Lukonga, Reece Nelson. I'm not saying you should be getting like 20 million for these guys, but you should be able to get something. And that, for me, is where the question mark remains over Andrea Berta. Brilliant, 10 out of 10, more or less, when it comes to incomings, 1 out of 10 when it goes to outgoings. How much of that is on him? We'll have to wait and see. Maybe in another couple of windows, we'll say, hey, look, he's a guy who can sell players well. The reality of that will be, though, we're going to be selling some players that people don't want us to sell. That's
what do you mean by that? Because I think I know what you mean by that. But what do you mean by that? Some fans have said that.
Well, you know, let's say we get to next summer, and let's say Calafiori's been brilliant all season, and this is a pure hypothetical. I'm not saying it's going to happen, right? And I don't want it to happen. But here's a scenario where Calafiori's been brilliant all season, and Nkapie's been brilliant all season, and all of a sudden Miles Lewis-Skelly is not playing as much, and Arsenal go, hey, you know what? Someone comes in with a big offer, and we say, yeah, we'll take that. And we'll take 70 million for Miles Lewis-Skelly. And everyone would go, oh, why are we doing that? I love Miles Lewis-Skelly. The reality is you tend to get big money for players you like and you love and who are good.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right? That's the reality. But traditionally, Arsenal have not been good sellers. I don't think the perception of that has changed at all in this window. I think we should have done better with some of the players that we had going out.
100%.
Like four or five players going out on deadline day. That's not good. Manage those situations better. You know, it's all a bit desperate, and I think it's an area we badly need to improve, because if you bring in even 50 million, it gives you a bit more wiggle room if there's an opportunity in January or next summer. As it is, I think we're going to be operating at a bit of a loss, you know, in PSR terms. We've spent far more than we've brought in. You do need, in this modern era,
that will catch up with you as well.
It'll catch up with you. It'll prevent you from doing business, or it will force you into selling players maybe you don't want to sell. So we don't sell well traditionally. So it's not all on Andrea Berta. It is not. But I think we maybe need to give him another couple of windows to see what he can do in that regard. But I think it's been a disappointing outgoing window from Arsenal from a financial perspective. The players have gone. We couldn't have them hanging around like a bad smell, but I feel like we've undervalued or haven't really extracted any value from them.
I don't think anyone can disagree with what you're saying. In terms of incomings, you know, I think looking at that, we've got 3 level raises in Zubimendi, Gyökeres, and Eze. Big fan of Hincapie and all of them. As you said there, we haven't began to turn the wheel in terms of our reputation of being good sellers. And not that you're watching what other clubs are doing, but you can't help but look around and say, you know, maybe that could have been us. And I look at us and think, you know what, if we could get Haaland to a point, or selling players to a point where we can get decent money, then that could be reinvested. You said it there. I don't think anyone expects to see 8 or 9 players every summer. And any team that's doing that, as you see with Chelsea, are doing the wrong kind of thing, right? So hopefully we can get more creme de la creme players next season. I do want to ask you about left wing. Did you think like a left winger would arrive? Did you think we'd sign a left winger? I know we got Eze. I know we got Madueke. Did you think we'd sign a left winger? Did you think we need one? And then if you did or didn't, what did you think would happen with Trossard and or Martinelli?
I think Arsenal were probably open to selling one of those this summer, but I don't think there was the interest. I would have liked a left winger at the start of the window, I have to say. I felt like
really wanted Rodrigo, man.
I felt like that was the area where we could really, really improve and really do take it up a level, because I think Martinelli and Trossard last season, I think, if I'm right, Trossard got 10 goals and 10 assists. And Martinelli got 10 goals and 6 assists. So that's like, they're reasonable. They're not brilliant, but they're not terrible numbers.
That's good players, all right.
It felt like an area that we could improve. I'm happy with Eze, though. I'm happy with Eze. I know we were linked to Rodrigo. I feel like the money would have been way too big. I don't think the improvement would have been worth the fee and and the wages. And I think if we bring in Rodrigo, we're not getting Eze. And if you ask me, I prefer Eze than Rodrigo, to be honest, even if he's not traditionally a left winger. I think we have options out there now as well. You know, Madueke can play out there. A left-footed winger on the left-hand side gives us something different. He can stretch the play a little bit. I think he is more comfortable on the right. And obviously with Saka out, he's going to play there for the most part. But I think I'm pleased with how we can do things differently from that left-hand side now. I still think long-term there are going to be some questions over Martinelli, question over Trossard. Maybe there's scope for one of those to depart in January. We'll wait and see what their situations are like. But I'm glad we've done something, and I'm glad we have different options over there now. And I think Eze is a big part of that.
And I think Eze is a talismanic figure, man. And you know, it's like we forget we did sign Zubimendi and we did sign Gyökeres, and we do have a decent team. So it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out. And as Andrew said earlier, it's still only been 3 games in. I've only got one question left for Andrew before we let him get out of here, yo. Just as a bit of fun. If you could give Mikel Arteta one piece of advice, what would it be? Not that we're in any position because we're armchair experts, but if you could, what piece of advice would you give him?
I'll go back to what I said. Trust your defense. You've built an absolutely brilliant defense. You have got brilliant defenders. Ben White, Jurrien Timber, William Saliba, Gabriel, Ricardo Calafiori, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Christian Mosquera, and now Piero Hincapié. You have got a defensive platform that should allow your team to go forward and attack with greater creativity, with greater drive, with greater verve. Trust your defense to allow your attack to cook, if that's the right way of putting it in this day and age. So that's the one piece of advice I would give Arteta. Not that I'm qualified, but from my armchair to your armchair, that's what I would do.
I think that's bang on, man. My piece of advice would be, as silly as it sounds, don't overthink it, because I think for Mikel Arteta, it's a double-edged sword. You're a professional manager. You're paid to overthink. I need you to overthink. But sometimes, for as intricate as the system is, I sometimes think football's a simple game and just let the players play. Like, I think they're so switched on defensively, like you said with the defenders, but the whole team, that they're sensible individuals. They know when they need to get back. They know when they don't. I look at, it's not the same, but I look at Paris Saint-Germain when they played us. It felt like that's kind of how I want my team to play. I'm seeing their attackers track back, but they're also swapping flanks and doing everything. So I'd say maybe not overcomplicate stuff, but yeah, man. Andrew, as usual, it's always fantastic to speak to you. It's only we've spoken for an hour or so about many of things, and it's only 3 games in the season. Where can people find you before I let you get out of here, man?
Oh, arseblog.com. Everything's there. You know, everything we do is out of there, so you can find it. The Arseblog website or the Arseblog app. You can get the app for iOS or for Android.
Download that, folks.
Yeah, get it downloaded. And thanks for having me on, and thanks to everybody for watching. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk soon, hopefully.
We will definitely talk soon, Andrew, man. Appreciate you for giving up your time. I mean, you know where to follow the guy. He said it. So, yeah, people, we're going to get out of here. Like, comment, subscribe, follow on the platforms. Andrew, one love, my guy. Come on, you gun it.
All right.
Come on. In a bit.